Hey friends, this is Audie Cornish, host of CNN This Morning and The Assignment, and guess what? Every story you care about, every angle you want unpacked is now streaming on CNN. That means you can catch my show or other CNN programming whenever you want on your favorite device. And a subscription also gets you access to exclusive video series and unlimited articles. So subscribe to CNN at cnn.com/subscription.
You are tuned in to the FowlWeather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
And here we go. This is our time of year as duck hunters across duck country USA. Canada is freezing out. The early ducks are moving south, and the mallards, black ducks, diving ducks, and Canada geese are on the move too. Is there a better time of year? Man, I don't think so. The FowlWeather Migration Alert is activated, so you know where the ducks are at before the ducks know where they're at. Remember, we do not report ducks that have already shown up in places like Wisconsin, Oregon, or Michigan, days after they've arrived. The FowlWeather Migration Alert forecasts migration before it happens, so you know what days are the best days to hunt in the coming week. This week, we also again cover photoperiod versus weather migration, that the buck rut, and how ducks are not bucks, plus your only duck migration forecast available. All this week on the FowlWeather Podcast. A quick reminder to rate, follow, like, and share the FowlWeather Podcast to get all the latest updates on our exclusive duck migration forecast each Monday morning throughout season, plus all of our informative content throughout the year. Be the guy with the real information about the ducks and where the ducks are at. I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. We thank our every week listeners. You know who you are. Those that never miss a single migration forecast episode each Monday morning. Y'all are as ate up as me about ducks, duck biology, and duck migration. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks know where they're at. Our dedicated weekly listeners can pick the best days to hunt because the FowlWeather Podcast forecasts fresh ducks hot from the north. Shoot the ducks from the north before they know where they're at. I'm your host, Dr. Mike, coming to you from the home office in Jack's Reef. Man, what a week. It started off with a dizzying win by the Buffalo Bills over the Chiefs. I was 9 rows up on the 20-yard line, just great seats. 6 a.m. roll out of bed to get prepped and ready for 4 tailgates with friends was completely worth it. It might be lost on some, but Bills fans are amazing, and we were surrounded by great people outside and inside the stadium. We made friends with some great Chiefs fans that were seated next to us. A friend since Forestry College and I hit a German pub in Buffalo as pregame. We met with some friends from the Western New York Delta Waterfall chapter. We blew up a Kermit the Frog effigy hung from a tree. If you know about the Kermit reference. We ate good food, shared some quality beers, shared football and duck hunting stories. All this on a genuinely perfect Western New York day. Leaves were crimson and yellow. They fluttered in the light of a 5 to 10 mile per hour wind, 45-degree temperatures. And as the sun set, we entered Highmark Stadium for the last time. The new stadium's going up this year, and that's where we're going to be next year. It was a perfect day, a perfect win, and a perfect week thereafter. We remain in our split, so my wife and I spent time in tree stands chasing gorgeous whitetails around the farm and nearby environments, and they did not disappoint, but they did dodge us left and right. A fat doe picked me out when I drew my bow. A dude that I gave a ridiculous name to, he's called Dr. Dagger White Tines, ran by both my wife and I, and he never stopped. He's a beautiful 8-point with really tall brow tines. He was just working really quick from one bedding area to the other in the evening. The cameras kept clicking and big bucks they're just dodging us. But it was also just a great week to be alive, watching the seasons change, the farms abuzz with planting garlic, digging the last of the potatoes, and now starting to regularly fill the wood stove as we wait on the first flakes of white stuff to fly. Last week, we predicted that weekend warriors would do well on ducks this week, and they didn't disappoint either. From my deer stand, I could hear newly arriving mallards on a local wetland. Last week, it was whistling widgeon and peeping greenwings, but it turned over to mostly loud mallards. We are moving towards the shortest days of the year in exponential form, my friends. If you blink, you will miss it. And I'm telling you, don't miss it. It can't get any better, my friends across duck country. Thanksgiving and opening of southern duck seasons are coming. It is truly the best time of year. And man, if you blink, you will miss it. Skip work, damn it. Find the time to skip work for the waters, woods, and fields of your lives. We all deserve it. It's one of the things we try to do on the FowlWeather Podcast is really give you those best days to hunt. And sometimes it might be in the middle of the week. And sometimes, damn it, you might have to skip out of work and chase those ducks. And above all, at the end of this episode, we report good news on duck migration. But first, we again cover photoperiod versus weather migrators because y'all just keep coming up with the most fantastical explanations of why ducks migrate. This is kind of made-up stuff out in left field, folks. So please stick with me for the fun. Beckman Game Calls has it dialed in. If you want a duck call that is adjustable to your air pressure and sounds like a duck, this is it. I've blown a ton of different calls in my life, but this one is the real deal. Look, we don't endorse just anything. We are only going to put forward a call that works. The Edison by Chris Beckman of Beckman Game Calls, yeah, this beauty sounds like a duck. I only know of one published research paper focused on what makes a duck call sound like a duck. Go look me up, and you will see that colleagues and I have the only paper published in scientific literature about what makes a duck call sound like a duck. For sure, Chris Beckman did his homework, and this call sounds like a duck. This guy knows how to make a duck call, period. But don't just take my word for it. Here's the proof. First, a hen recording, and then the Edison in the big woods of Arkansas. Visit them today at BeckmanGameCalls.com. All right, quick update. Beckman Game Calls is closed for duck season. Yeah, give the guy some space. Sometimes you just gotta hunt. His calls are available to purchase at the following brick and mortar locations while supplies last, though: Edwards Food Giant in Harrisburg, Arkansas, and Presley's Outdoors in Bartonville, Illinois. Next, here's the deal, man. My brothers and sisters out there in duck country, if y'all could stop sending me links to social media that has people saying stuff like ducks fly south on a south wind because it's aerodynamic with their feathers, it's just physics. That'd be great if you could stop sending me that junk. Look, these people ever took physics anyway. Goodness. Y'all also should know that Forbes Biological Station, I think that's a place most of y'all respect for their survey stuff. They also do a ton of really good research. Forbes Biological Station developed this work many moons ago about what type of wind ducks fly on. It was in the mid-2000s, and they found that northwest winds at an altitude of about 1,400 feet had a direct impact on decisions of ducks to migrate. And no, nothing in any of that analysis showed that ducks migrate south on a south wind at the altitude that ducks migrate. Maybe y'all are looking at surface winds too much because winds differ at different altitudes in the atmosphere. Remember, the world ain't flat, and the atmosphere is a hamburger made up of many layers, and y'all just keep looking at your microcosm. Your environment is the only glowing example of the anecdote to live by. Said another way, the world is big from left to right and north to south, and the planet is dynamic. You live in your home. Ducks live outside. I'm pretty sure over millions of years of evolution, ducks have figured out the best method to survive, and it ain't flying south into a south wind. Going to the same place each year, no matter what, and making decisions based on the position of the sun and the moon, because weather regularly decouples from these constants. Think about that. Your day-length thing is the same every year. The moon goes through its phases. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And ducks ain't making decisions on this because the weather is decoupled with these constants. We also hear that Look, this 5,000-acre amazing artificially flooded corn patch with 3,000 acres of moist soil and mixed habitat otherwise as refuges has tons of ducks way before weather. Well, kids, the ducks you likely have are 90+% made up of early ducks. That weather has likely already been enough to the north to move them south. We've had that weather for weeks now, right? Mostly these places still don't have mallards, these big complexes. I mean, like really mallards, not just a few, but heck, everyone has a few mallards right now. Even Florida has Disney mallards floating around the condos. So don't go nuts and act like the world turned upside down and ducks stopped doing duck things based on weather. If I was AI and I looked at social media right now and didn't even consult scientific literature, it would tell you that ducks migrate solely on photoperiod, mostly on a full moon, and on a south wind, directly into a south wind. Honestly, though, the crazy BS folks post is fantastical. But here's the deal. If y'all have a question, here's what you do. Send it my way. The FowlWeather Podcast would love to do an episode, or maybe more than one episode, on answering your questions, or maybe we'll just answer them at the front end, right? So what makes ducks migrate? How does moist soil work? What about the moon and gravitational pull of the earth? What did ducks do before glacial periods and do during glacial periods? What do ducks do then? It's an open slate. Ask away. Ask me what they eat, why, when. A lot of the stuff we've covered, but if there's little nooks and crannies we haven't got into, send your questions to Dr. Mike at FowlWeather.co. That's C-O, not .com. So don't send it to Dr. Mike at FowlWeather.com. It's .co. You can also Facebook message me, find me on Instagram, under the FowlWeather brand. And we'll even pick a listener of the week that stumped Dr. Mike. Heck, we don't have the answers to everything duck, but rather we know just about everything about ducks. Up next, we contrast the buck rut with the duck butt headed south, so please stick with us. The Farmland Group is your one-stop shop for real estate brokerage, consulting, management, lending, and appraisal across Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, and growing. Contact them today at farmlg.com. Hey, I'm telling you, do not hesitate because these folks are busy buying, selling, and providing consulting and management strategies that build value into your portfolio and your land. So get in the queue today. Get on their radar. Get on their books. Man, y'all won't be disappointed. Contact the Farmland Group today at farmlg.com. That's farmlg.com. Okay, and we are back. So the buck rut happens at the same time each year. It is triggered by photoperiod. Moons, temperature, nothing has anything to do with it. Bucks are still most active at night during the rut because most deer, at least in pressured areas, are nocturnal. But secondarily, they're active between sunrise and 10 a.m. and then 3 p.m. until dark. It's why I'm finding the most time in my schedule to sit my butt in a stand for as many hours as possible right now as bucks move between bedding areas in the morning and the evening. But that is not a duck. Bucks do this because does come into estrus all together with the aim of dumping fawns out at the same time of year in spring so they swamp the predator community. It is super simple. All they have to do across large spans of time is produce more young than the predator community can eat. We need to note that this is not a conscious decision, but rather is formed by natural selection. Does that breed too early or too late suffered greater losses, and that genetic material was lost to the ages. For ducks headed back to the north, they are also programmed to move north as fast as possible. Early nesting ducks swamp the predator community, but more importantly, they race against time in a generally drying summer that reduces vegetated wetland edges that provide critical cover for ducklings. Survival is certainly tied to the amount of brood cover. All this work was done in the 1980s, stuff we've known about for a long time. Of course, ducks are different and among species and gadwall nest later, but their broods hang out in the middle of wetlands more than others. Here, they avoid mink, which frequent the semi-permanent and permanent wetlands that gadwall use. Most early nesting ducks exploit seasonal wetlands and thereafter have greater swings in population. That is, your species like mallards and blue-winged teal that nest early and exploit seasonal wetlands have greater swings in populations generally than ducks that nest later. The many duck species we have in our landscape are all able to live together and be with us because they fill slightly different places on wetlands and don't compete enough to not coexist. But the main point here that I'm making is that in spring, the rush is on, and it is generally controlled by photoperiod. It is certainly adjusted by the snow and ice line too, but to a greater extent, it is controlled by photoperiod triggers because that all makes sense to get as far north as you can, as early as you can, because early nesters are more successful, and therefore the late nesters' genetic material was lost because they suffered greater losses and less survival. This is natural selection, folks. It's pretty damn easy. On my first exam of the semester to my students of the Ecology and Management of Waterfowl course at ESF, I asked this question: is a straight up true or false? Most species of waterfowl are flexible migrants with initial migratory movements south in autumn caused by photoperiod, but then switching to weather-related causes as autumn progresses into winter. Thankfully, 90% plus of them got it right is true, and from what I've seen as the duck people across duck country USA, well, we get it right and understand that ducks migrate based on weather, although there is some level of initial photoperiod cue, and we'll get into that a little bit more here. But that other 10% of y'all, woot, they got theories, the hopeless few. Look, kids, let's think of it this way. In the fall, it just doesn't make sense to go farther south than you have to if all you're going to do is just go back north anyway. This is all about survival. Do ducks use photoperiod in the moon to migrate? Yes, they do. But don't take that as an absolute. Here's the thing. We can mix things, right? It doesn't have to be a smoking gun. But is that the primary driver of migration? No, it is not. Photoperiod changes hormones in the duck's body. Just like a teenager gets horny at a certain age or the buck gets ready at just that right time. But in ducks, the environment is so much more variable, and so they adjust much more widely to weather than the buck in rut. His urges are driven by a breeding schedule that must happen because of the need to have his offspring live because of predator pressure on his kids born in the next spring. The ducks, they only need to pair and survive winter and then survive going back north to nest. And how they do that is by adjusting their schedule based on weather. So the photoperiod creates the condition for ducks to migrate south in their bodies, but then corticosterone, we call it CORT, it's for short usually as scientists, the stress hormone in birds, CORT makes them decide if they are going any farther than needed. When the photoperiod is right for migration, but CORT is not high, that is, they have food, a place to sit, and little stress, they stay put. When photoperiod is right for migration, but CORT ramps up a bunch because the weather conditions get bad, and the weather is right to fly south, a northwest wind, not a south wind, they move. Not on a south wind, but a north wind at the flight altitude that ducks fly. About 1,400 feet is on average where they fly. And they move at different lengths. Some go far, some stopping short depending on their fat reserves. Some, the adults, have places they know and they go to them, just like a hen comes back to a place she successfully fledged ducklings before. Ducks going south go to places they lived before because they lived there and they survived. So, for sure, imprinting, or what scientists call phylopatry, yeah, it's a thing. But it ain't an absolute, and no duck shows up at the same day each year to a migration area or wintering place because ducks are flexible migrants. They simply take advantage of the variation in resources that are widely different from year to year. I'm probably going to go through this explanation again someday soon because I'm going to hear some other fantastical stuff and somebody's going to send me something about, ducks fly, what was it? Ducks fly south on a south wind because it's just physics and their feathers are aerodynamic that way. And if they flew south on a north wind, it would blow their feathers backwards. It just doesn't make sense. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So ducks are like, what, sitting still and not going any speed? Anyhow, I'm not even going to go there. Whew. It's a lot for a kid like me to take in. But it's worth repeating that, yes, birds use photoperiod as a cue. They do tend to, especially geese and swans, specifically in the waterfowl world, and diving ducks migrate on a full moon. Those are birds that tend to really use big bodies of water as they go south, and you can see those on a full moon if you've ever been in a plane, right? So photoperiod's a cue. The moon does matter a little bit. It's not the ultimate driver. And then all this is wildly adjusted by weather, as we've seen through time. So yeah, ducks use photoperiod to make decisions about migration, but they certainly adjust strongly based on weather, some more than others. And mallards and black ducks probably adjust more than most because they can. And increasingly through time, staying north for these ducks makes more sense than going south because the weather that affects duck migration has become more frequently mild. The summary: bucks aren't ducks and ducks aren't bucks. You should definitely hunt the rut. For us in Jack's Reef Country, I'm in the stand as much as possible from Halloween until mid-November. That is the rut. Every year, no matter the moon or the weather, they have a plan. For ducks, it is different and they don't play the same. Ducks are not bucks, period. Up next, your migration alert, so please stick with us. How many days have you had empty skies over the duck blind? Your property can be more with wildlife strategies. It is no secret that hiring a consultant, an expert in managing water, woods, and fields, an expert in duck food, an expert in hunting pressure management, hiring a consultant yields better habitat for the critters you chase. Less empty skies, more quality days of field, more smiles for miles with family and friends. If that's your game and goal, contact Ryan Delaney at ryan@farmlg.com for a site visit. Man, I tell you, the timing of these coming weather patterns couldn't be better for many of us. Some of us are really starting to lose our early ducks, maybe sooner than we would like, but it is time for the mallards to start moving. If you missed our episode last week that predicted the duck migration this coming winter, we noted possibility of a major disturbance for the Mississippi and Atlantic flyways around Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving came early, and we're starting to see a touch of this this stuff this coming week, but it warms up a bit after that. But then we predict the cold and snow to really ramp up starting just before Thanksgiving, sticking our necks out a little bit, but probably around Tuesday before Thanksgiving. It's a bit out, but the atmosphere is really set up for a cold and snow blast at that time, just in time for lots of y'all's openers, or at least opening week. Also, bad news, though, on the finishing of the Snow Advance Index. If you don't know what the Snow Advance Index is, go back to our last episode to find out. The Snow Advance Index did just what it did last year and flattened out at the end of the month, going from the fourth highest recorded since 2015 to among the lowest recorded and much below the mean. What does this mean? We have to look at all the models, but it would indicate a more organized polar vortex, especially as we go into the latter part of duck season, which does line up with our prediction of a January thaw in generally balmy conditions for most towards the end of season. But if the ducks get to us this year in November and December, it won't be a bust of a season. Just might be harder to get ducks on wintering areas to cooperate with mild January weather. Alrighty, let's start in the Mississippi and Atlantic flyways this week because this is where the major movement should happen, and this should really push early migrating ducks like pintail, green-winged teal, widgeon, and shoveler south in the coming week. Even gadwall that are a little more tolerant will start to make their way out of the latitude of South Dakota in great abundance, more so than past weeks. I'd expect a big push of ducks into Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, and Tennessee in the coming week, especially early in the week, probably mostly Tuesday night into Wednesday. There will be a small smattering of mallards mixed in with that too, but I'd bet that at about the latitude of Iowa by late in the week, we are seeing a shift to primarily mallards in their counts. I'll talk some central flyway stuff here too because it gets a bit colder and with some shots of snow as we go into North Dakota, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. So I'd expect a movement of mallards out of this region and heading into Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. But with peak numbers around, southern Wisconsin over to mid-South Dakota and up towards like the Montana, North Dakota border. Of course, some ducks really like to get their butts in gear and will wing much farther south, especially early this week on really favorable winds. The Intermountain region this week is generally not losing many ducks. Maybe some small trickle of ducks out late in the week, but we predict they will pick up mallards from the Canadian provinces as well. Okay, with the cold coming east of the Rockies, in Canada over to the Atlantic flyway, we are looking at a mass exodus of early ducks from the New York latitude and likely making it to the mid-Atlantic, southern PA, Maryland, and Delaware. Should pick up a bunch of early ducks, and many will also make their way into the latitude in North Carolina. Some widgeon and green-winged teal will even make the move into the South Carolina latitude this week in abundance. Mallards and black ducks will be the next big news this week, finally getting into southern Ontario in greater abundance and making continued but small moves into the latitude of New York. Numbers of mallards and black ducks overall should jump in the Great Lakes region, Ohio, New York, and over into the Lake Champlain Valley between New York and Vermont. Some of these birds will trickle farther into the mid-Atlantic, but not that many yet. The mallards and black ducks will make this move early in the week, and the other ducks will make moves primarily on Tuesday night into Wednesday, and then again later in the week. So mallard black duck movement into the Great Lakes region that I just spoke about, kind of early in the week, and then our other wimpier ducks will make moves primarily on Tuesday night into Wednesday. If they haven't already moved out ahead of this front, there is a bit of what looks like an indication that they're moving out ahead of the front too, and we've had some mallards show up this Saturday, Sunday. That was predicted last week though, right? So anyway, for diving ducks, which are more calendar migrants, here's one that is. They really use those moonlit nights, and they make major jumps to stable rivers and lakes. We are seeing growing numbers again this week in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes region. Same, it'll be Tuesday into Wednesday as the big push. So if you have a chance in that part of the world, the upper Midwest, over through the Great Lakes, southern Ontario, and into New York, to give midweek a try this week, I'd give it a run for mallards, black ducks, and diving ducks. They will be building in numbers this week. Overall, not a complete freeze-out in any way, but the best movement of ducks we've seen in the Mississippi and Atlantic flyways all year. We actually have a predicted 18-hour period of below-freezing temperatures coming to Jack's Reef Country, which may temporarily make mallards move to bigger water. So folks, think about hitting rivers and lakes. I'd say Wednesday morning would be a really good day for it. But it comes with some snow and then rain. Rain and warm after, which should really make some great duck habitat on the thaw. So I would shoot the birds going back to the marshes on the thaw. We might have some puddles and fields too that might be worth a hit. So we don't expect our mallards or those across the Great Lakes region and upper Midwest to be going, anywhere soon en masse until that Thanksgiving blast in a week and a half, if they even go on that one, right? But best stuff we've seen for a while. Can't all be rosy, though. The Pacific Flyway, for the first time this year, is the slow flyway this coming week, with little to no mallard movement predicted. So if there is a week to baby the mallards or reduce pressure so they don't go stale, this is the week. Early ducks will trickle out of Oregon, Montana, Idaho, Washington this week into locales farther south, especially really late in the week into the weekend when they can find favorable light winds. The west is weird with winds, even the higher altitude stuff, and these birds are just going to look for favorable light winds. There's no real northwest, northeast wind out there that would make them move, but just favorable light winds that they can make the jump. All that said, man, folks across duck country should be really set up this year with early ducks having arrived, a trickle of mallards even into the deep south, and a bunch of mallards balled up in the upper Midwest over to the Oregon, kind of Washington latitude to the west, and Great Lakes, Ohio, New York latitude to the east. My friends across duck country, we are working our way into the thick of duck season. Likely coming next week will be our second installment of the long-term forecast as our winter weather coming for December becomes more clear. When our winter weather coming for December and January becomes much more clear. Thanks for listening, and as always, may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.